Well, hello again. Welcome to Ottawa Exposed. I'm David Krayden, the senior parliamentary columnist for the Western Standard. Nice to be back. We've got a lot of ground to cover this week. And have you noticed how there's just so much happening right now all over the world? We've got increased stress and pressure all over the world right now in terms of danger zones. But there's also just so much happening. It's difficult to keep our fingers on it and to stay apprised of what's happening. We're going to try to do that today. And I wanted to lead off this morning with I think the story of the week is probably RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki, who is retiring, not resigning, retiring as the head of the RCMP. Now, does this strike you as a bit convenient? Because next week, on February 20th, the Emergencies inquiry report is going to be released. And I have the sense that the commission, the Public Emergency Order Commission, is going to have some criticism of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for invoking the Emergencies Act. And I think Justin Trudeau wants Brenda Lucki out of the picture. Do I think she was pressured to retire? Yes, I do believe that. It's common in politics. And Lucki has been a faithful supporter in many ways of Justin Trudeau and the Liberal policies. You know, and we mentioned in the column how she was pushing gun control legislation during a probe into a massacre in Nova Scotia. And she certainly must have been the person at the RCMP who said it was not in the public interest to file fraud charges against Justin Trudeau over his trip to visit the Aga Khan in 2016. So she was there for Justin Trudeau, but apparently, like a lot of women who serve Justin Trudeau or this government, she's expendable. She's no longer needed, and she's gone. And that seems to me what's happening here. Now, when this report comes out next week, Commissioner Justice Paul Rouleau can very emphatically state that Justin Trudeau was not justified in invoking the Emergencies Act. And he might well do that. Or he could say he was justified, but he had other options. And that's where Lucki comes in as a convenient fall guy, fall woman, because the criticism of her has already been out there, that she failed to provide other solutions to Justin Trudeau. So don't be surprised when this report comes out next week if there's criticism for Brenda Lucki. And Justin Trudeau can conveniently say, I was misinformed. I was not adequately briefed. You know what's coming. You know he's going to do that. And that's exactly how Justin Trudeau behaves. So stay tuned. We'll be talking, I'm sure, with Freedom Convoy lawyer Eva Chipiuk next week. And she's always interesting to talk to. But I can't wait to see her response to the Emergencies Act inquiry report that's coming out. I can't wait to see it myself. So this will be quite exciting. Now I want to turn to my Wednesday story, which is one of the most underreported stories for at least a week. And this is the absolute environmental catastrophe that's occurring right now in East Palestine, and that's how they pronounce it, Palestine, Ohio, where there was a train derailment, and as in many cases, these trains are carrying toxic materials, hazardous chemicals, and when the train derails, it creates a disaster. Now, somebody who I wonder if they were in their right mind made the decision to have a planned or a an orchestrated burn of these chemicals. Why they couldn't have disposed of them before setting these things aflame and putting all of these dangerous chemicals in the environment, in the air, in the land, in the water, I don't know. I think it was a stupid, very stupid decision. Because, of course, these people were out there without any kind of masks. I mean, people were wearing masks thinking it's going to stop them from getting COVID, but they weren't wearing masks when there's toxic chemicals burning. And there's a huge black mushroom cloud over their town. And of course, there was nobody from the EPA there right away. The secretary, the cabinet secretary responsible for this crash, this derailment, is the transportation secretary, Pete Buttigieg, who is one of the most out of touch, tone deaf, irresponsible secretaries ever to serve in a United States cabinet. He didn't even notice what was going on for almost a week. And they are doing nothing to help these poor people in this working class town that's on the Pennsylvania-Ohio border. And, you know, we hear all of this nonsense about climate change as an existential threat. It's a code red emergency. It's going to cause the end of the world in 10 years. And this is the thing that should be most concerning to us. But of course, this is a real environmental disaster that can kill people. You know, climate change is not killing anybody. Certainly, there is such a thing as climate change, but it's not responsible for the deaths of people. You have a hard time correlating that. But I tell you, if people die as a result of this train derailment and burning chemicals, you won't have a hard time correlating that at all. And this is absolutely disgusting, because the fish are dying in the water. Pets are already dying. People are reporting sickness. And Joe Biden has not said a word. U.S. President Joe Biden has said absolutely nothing about this event. Why? Well, probably because the people in this town didn't vote for him in great numbers. And that's unfortunately how a lot of politicians think. And Joe Biden is nothing but a politician. He's not a leader. He's a politician through and through. And he's done nothing in his life except be a politician from the early 1970s on. What kind of chemicals are in the environment? Well, actually, incredibly, phosgene. Now, if you know anything about First World War history, that's one of the 3 lethal gases used. There was mustard gas, there was chlorine gas, there's phosgene. Phosgene can kill you, as well as some of the other chemicals that are in the air, that are in the land and in the water now. And this is an absolute travesty. And I wonder why liberals who used to be concerned about real pollution, who saw real pollution as a crisis, can only talk about climate change now. Can only jet around the world going to conferences talking about climate change. But they're not talking about an environmental catastrophe in Ohio. And I tell you, if this happened in Canada, we would get the same response from the Trudeau government, because Justin Trudeau is completely focused on carbon as being a pollutant. Except, of course, when he's jet setting around the world, increasing the size of his own carbon footprint. That's okay, because he's a hypocrite about those things. But would Justin Trudeau be just as concerned if this happened in a conservative riding in Canada? Or would he want to talk about climate change and how important it is to have a carbon tax? This, to me, I think, is one of the most telling stories of the week. And I am absolutely appalled at how the authorities, the officials in the United States, have responded to this, because it is absolutely inexcusable. Absolutely inexcusable. Now, I want to turn to something, a concept that is really angering a lot of people, a lot of our readership, and a lot of the viewers of Ottawa Exposed. And it's something called 15-minute cities. Now, we're going to watch a brief video in a second that describes one 15-minute city concept in Saudi Arabia. And you have to see this to believe it. But if you're not familiar with the concept, and believe it or not, I really wasn't for at least a couple of weeks ago when I first started to research this and to discover where it came from. And where is it coming from? Of course, the two usual suspects, the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. And 15-minute cities can briefly be described as this. It's making your city into a place where you can literally walk or take public transit anywhere in that city within a 15-minute span. And please don't think about using your car, because that's the point of everything being about 15 minutes away. Now, I first heard about this. I said, I think this concept is not new. We already have this concept. It's called prisons. Yes, penitentiaries are like that, aren't they? Because the convicts are literally a stone's throw away from everything. The laundry facilities, the cafeteria, the library, the gymnasium, it's all a stone's throw. It's all very close, walking distance. They don't have to go very far. And of course, the warden knows where they are all the time, and there's nowhere else to go. And isn't this what the authoritarian WEF has in mind here? And if you put people in these 15-minute cities, you congregate them all into a small area, isn't it much easier to lock down and to ensure that these people can't get out and do anything? I mean, China was doing this during its last attempt to eradicate the zero tolerance policy on COVID-19. They were going to make sure there was not one more case of COVID-19 in China. So they literally locked people in their apartments in Shanghai. They couldn't get out. And there's a video, of course, of these people screaming from their apartment windows. But I joke, this is the 1 minute apartment concept, because it takes you about 1 minute to get from the bathroom or the bedroom to the front door. And you can't get that front door unlocked. So yeah, it's real quick. But I want to show you a video, and this is absolutely fascinating. So there you go. I'm sure your mind was challenged by that video. And you probably had two questions in mind. What happens when all of the birds fly into that mirror? That is an absolute bit of insanity. The other thing is, you know how difficult it is to get water to Las Vegas? I mean, you're always hearing about the fact they're going to run out of water someday. Well, how are they going to get water to this huge population of people in the middle of the desert in Saudi Arabia? Have they even thought about that? Are they even concerned about that? Or is this really about keeping people under guard? Because that's what lockdowns are about. And of course, what is fascinating about this is that it's not just COVID-19, it's not just pandemics that call for people to be locked down in the interest of so-called public safety. The WEF says on their website, as climate change and global conflict cause shocks and stresses at faster intervals and increasing severity, the 15-minute city will become even more critical. Oh, when the WF says something's critical, watch out. Because remember, the founder of the WF, Klaus Schwab, this is the guy talking like a Bond villain, either Blofeld or Goldfinger. You take your pick. He's the guy that said he wants a computer chip, microchip, be implanted in people's heads so that he knows what you're thinking at the same time you do. And he says, wouldn't that be fascinating? So I see an authoritarian side to the WEF and Klaus Schwab, as I'm sure you all do, because he really does like control. And 15-minute cities are all about control. I mean, they can laud these places as just wonderful villages. And apparently Paris, France is thinking about becoming a 15-minute city. One of the most beautiful cities, one of the most historic cities in the world, wants to become a large prison camp. And to me, it's absolute insanity. They've been talking about this for Edmonton, Alberta, here in Canada. And Edmonton, Alberta can be a very difficult place to navigate in February when it's minus 40. But I think it would be even less hospitable as a 15-minute city. But that's the latest here in terms of how we're going to control people's movements. And like I say, if you think this isn't about control, just look what authoritarian countries have used the lockdowns for, in just absolute, complete abuse of human rights. Because they don't care about human rights. They want you in your place. And a 15-minute city, it is a great way to facilitate that. So I want you to see that. And we don't have much time remaining. And I want to talk about an issue I haven't even touched on yet in terms of why are we suddenly seeing UFOs all over Alaska, Yukon, Lake Huron? And why did this all of a sudden happen like last weekend? We had all these sightings. And Justin Trudeau didn't really say, hey, dude, I shot down a UFO. I said that in my column. I bet he said that privately. But he was so proud of himself for ordering the downing of this UFO. And we still haven't been told what exactly these objects were. Now, were they Chinese spy balloons? If so, why is it taking this long to tell us that? Or were they actually weather balloons from the United States? Is this what this is all about? But certainly what it's really about is the distraction from the biggest story last week. And this could be the biggest story of the year. Veteran journalist, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Seymour Hersh wrote a fantastic column in Substack where he says the United States was responsible for the intentional sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines. These pipelines, the pipelines itself physically were owned by Germany. The liquid natural gas coursing through them was owned by Russia. When these pipelines were blown up, American officials applauded it like it was some victory. Victoria Nuland, Undersecretary of State for Policy, said she was so happy that the Nord Stream pipelines are now twisted metal, sitting at the bottom of the Baltic Sea. We know Joe Biden threatened to take out these pipelines. He didn't say exactly how, but he said he would take them out and people would find out how they were going to do that. Now, Hersh has based the story on one whistleblowing source. But I tell you, this guy knows his material. He's been responsible for breaking some huge stories about government corruption in the past. And I think he's right about this. Why would Russia destroy its own pipeline? All it had to do, if it wanted to shut off the gas to Germany, is just stop sending the gas, shut the tap off. It didn't need to destroy the pipeline, so they'd have to be repaired at tremendous cost. Obviously, the United States had an interest in doing this. in forcing Germany on its path of aggression that is increasingly pitting NATO against Russia in a way that is frightening, that can lead to a nuclear confrontation and a nuclear war. And they don't seem to care what it takes, what they have to do to make this happen. It's insanity. We do not need a war with Russia. We do not need a war with China. We used to be told that all of our defense policy was geared towards avoiding a nuclear war because that was unthinkable. That was insanity. Nobody was going to win a nuclear war. Well, I'll tell you what, nobody was going to win one in 1962 at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Nobody was going to win one in the 80s. And nobody is going to win one in 2023. We're all going to be losers. And if the United States destroyed this pipeline, we need an investigation to make that fact clear and evident. I believe it was an intentional act of sabotage. And I think it's time we knew the truth about this. And I tell you, distractions with UFOs in the skies over our heads should never mean that we don't get to the bottom of real news stories. And as I said at the beginning, there's a lot of strange things happening right now. It's hard to stay abreast of the news. Things are happening so quickly. But here at Ottawa Exposed, it's my challenge, and I want to deliver the news to you every week. Read my column in the Western Standard. Become a subscriber at www.westernstandard.news. And for the Western Standard and for Ottawa Exposed, I'm David Krayden. And I want to say goodbye to all and have a great week until we meet again next week.
Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Without the CSSA, our gun rights would have been taken long ago. These guys are on the front lines helping to draft smart and intelligent firearms regulations and legislation in Canada, and more importantly, educating the public about how we keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people. To become a member, it's absolutely worth every penny. You can become a Western Standard member for just $10 a month or $99 a year for unlimited